Hey Glenn, how are you?
Good, good. How you guys doing?
We're good. Mike, does my hair look okay?
Yeah.
So, Mike Durkin, Glenn Runyan, Glenn Runyan, Mike Durkin.
Hey, Mike. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Glenn.
I like that shirt.
Thank you, thank you. Fresh off the press.
Are you a reader?
My wife is, so this is her collection with a few of my books scattered throughout it. So,
Mike, would you give Glenn a 30-second commercial, kind of like who you are?
Personally, I'm a native of DeWitt. My wife and I met in college down in Hartwick in Oneonta. We've been married 25 years. We've got three kids, 23, 20, 17. And professionally, I work at VIP Structures, so we design and build commercial properties. That probably covers the personal, professional aspects of my time here, but I love doing this, getting to know folks. Back in the day, we would do this in person over coffee, and we should do that still. But the platform allows us to do what we're doing today, and that's getting to know everybody else's stories and really, how we land where we are today. It's always a better story than the person who thinks they're telling it actually is. They're like, it's boring. And next thing you know, it's not boring. It's peeling that onion away. It's a lot of fun.
very cool.
We found too, Glenn, that a lot of times, someone will be telling their story and they'll just they'll blow by something that's, where my ears or Mike's ears are like, wait a second, time out. You're in a corporate space, but you took a break and ran a church as a leader of people in a church for 7 years. I think we want to hear about that. So speaking of people telling their stories, your shirt says a lot of what you do. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what brought you to what you're doing now, if that makes sense?
Sure, absolutely. So, my name is Glenn Runyan, and I am the new owner of Bodymind Float Center, Syracuse. So, my initial introduction to float tanks, sensor deprivation tanks, was Joe Rogan. I had a friend at the time introduce me to a YouTube kind of video where he started branching that out and talking about it. And then from there, I was like, what is this? This is right up my alley. And then lo and behold, we had one operating right in Rochester.
So Rochester's where you grew up, where you hung your hat originally?
That's correct. Yeah. Born and raised in Spencerport, New York, on the outskirts of Rochester. And then I joined the military in 2007 and did about a 4-year Army career there as a combat infantryman.
Well, thank you for your service. Above all things, we really appreciate you allowing us what we have today with the service that you've put forth. So thank you for that.
Proud to have served.
I've done my own research. Floatology, I think, is what I saw kicking around in the YouTube or the internet rabbit holes. Maybe that's just someone else's.
That might be somebody's own little phrase going around right now.
All right. Well, we're coining it here today if it isn't real before. But I saw a lot of people with PTSD, a lot of people with stress, a lot of people with pain. Is it fair to say that some of what came home with you from the Middle East was some of what brought you to floating as well?
It didn't necessarily bring me to floating, but the benefits were very apparent of how it can be beneficial to any vets who suffer from various forms of PTSD or injuries or mental issues going on. Myself, I had a bit of hypervigilance coming back. It wasn't bothersome to my general daily life, but it was still an aspect that I noticed about myself. And that hypervigilance is more just being very aware of all your surroundings, taking in every single little detail, and just kind of always basically having your head on a swivel and really just kind of scanning everything. So you're really kind of just still on edge instead of being relaxed. And for me, the float tank, that was kind of the biggest thing it kind of took away, like right off the bat. It's just, I felt awash with just peace, so I didn't really have that edge anymore. We actually worked with a warrior salute in Rochester to get some vets in that had more severe PTSD, and they found tremendous relief from their float tank sessions.
Just to give a brief history too for people watching and listening. So I had an introduction to floating about a year ago. Had amazing experience with it. I just wanted to dig in my own mental development and spiritual growth, if you want to call it that. And then I came back to the Float Center just here recently, and that's where I teamed up and met up with Glenn. So you were the person that greeted me after coming out of the floating session. So I gotta imagine being the guy in that chair or gal in that chair, coming out from their first experience or from just a profound experience. You must hear some pretty cool or witness some pretty cool experiences with people that are coming out for their first time. Is that fair?
That's very fair, and it's such a broad range of experiences. You know, for the more or less uninitiated, or they haven't really done too much background research, and they're just, you know, maybe word of mouth has guided them to the Float Center. You know, that we always hear it was very interesting. You know, so we'll get that, but then past that, we have guests who are dealing with chronic pain, and they're going to find relief for the first time in who knows how long, to just take a break from whatever they were dealing with, whether it's backaches or more serious conditions such as fibromyalgia. A lot of women suffer from it. The best description I've received from a floater was she said that her muscles felt like they were always twisted and contorted in pain, but from her float tank sessions, it felt like they were actually able to unwind and release for the first time in who knows how long. Just had a guest in yesterday, and she described how she was in for a flare-up, and how she was hoping that she would be able to kind of cut it off from getting any worse prior to with the float session. And she's a regular floater now, so she's scheduled back in like a few weeks now. So past the pain management aspect, there's also mental exploration and just personal development aspects that can certainly be achieved in the tank.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because I was assuming it was a relief point. When those folks are struggling with those symptoms and they're fighting with the doctors of what they're trying to get diagnosed with, and then they're fighting with the insurance companies to try to get to there. Talk a little bit, without getting too deep, but what does the insurance industry think of floating, and is there a code, if you will, an insurance code that folks can apply to your service?
We've had a handful of folks kind of approach this or towards me, asking if this is something that's generally covered. Right now, it is not. I think we kind of need more mainstream acknowledgement and just awareness right now.
I'm wondering, as we talk about making the city smaller and we try to connect some dots for your center and for yourself, I'm wondering if there's holistic wellness doctors out there that would be beneficial for you to make sure they're aware of the Float Center.
Absolutely.
So there might be some cross-pollinating, and again, that'll be up to you to have that conversation with the doc.
So the thing that Mike Durkin left off of his 30-second commercial is he lives for making connections. So him and I, as he mentioned, we sat down years ago, both of our mentors in business. So the gentleman he worked for at the time and the gentleman I worked for at the time, we were both in business development for their teams, and they put us together to say, hey, you guys should compare notes and see how you can help each other, introduce each other to different businesses and different people that are going to help your trajectory. So Mike and I, in preparation, in talking to you today, and the whole initiative of this concept of making the city smaller, it kind of came out of a circumstance where we needed to get creative to find those connections. But ultimately, what we want to see come from this is be able to help somebody or help other businesses get connected with synergies of others that are going to help them double down on their trajectory towards their goals and their objectives. So with that, I think you spent quite a few years working with this gentleman who owned the center before, and then I looked at your LinkedIn profile today, and it looks like 3 months ago, this change took place, and to me, that's where I get goosebumps and excited as something that's new. So tell us a little bit about that venture, if you would.
Sure. So 2013, I met David Brickman. He's the founder of Bodymind Float Center. After I joined on board, I was out on the streets for the Jazz Fest in Rochester, the Cornhill Fest in Rochester, just handing out flyers, hey, flotation therapy's coming to Rochester. So from then on, we kind of hit the ground running there too, and just were able to.
Hold on a second.
I don't know, who's that?
Who's that?
So
I want to meet
this
him.
is.
Or her.
Hey, Worf, come here. Oh,
You
you're
have
not gonna
room
listen
for
to me.
him on screen?
Come here. Yeah. So this is Worf, the Great Dane. Worf the Wolf. Oh boy.
How
And
old is Mark?
Worf will be let's see, he'll be 18 months in January. So
Wow.
Does he have a bathrobe on?
he's got a sweater, a doggy sweater, a massive doggy sweater at that. So he is a trip. He's 130 pounds right now, and he has potential to weigh as much as like 140 to 180, and I think he stopped getting tall, but
So how many floats do you have to charge somebody for to feed him every month?
oh man, oh shoot. You know what? It's definitely, I had to budget accordingly. Let's put it that way.
You were moving through your process with Bodymind and
Yeah, absolutely. So coming back to Rochester, 2013, starting out the Float Center more or less, and just really trying to get the word out in Rochester. We started out, with a trickle, and then it kind of just led to a flood of guests. Fortunately, that center is located on Park Ave, so we got to see plenty of folks, plenty of foot traffic to really kind of start getting the word out. And then as that center grew, we even had notoriety from Syracuse. So much so that in 2016, they made the decision to look to build another location out in Syracuse. And at that point, they approached me to see if I was interested in making the move out here to run that location. I said, absolutely. Made my way out, and I think it was February 2017, the Syracuse location officially opened. And we were ahead. Shortly after that, I met my wife in Syracuse as well. So that was a blast.
Does she float?
She does not float as much as she should. I've been trying to get her back in the tank. So one of the struggles is just trying to get for her at least, is getting comfortable. She likes the neck pillows, which is an option for folks. So I think last time she floated, I think she tripled up on them. So
And for everybody listening who hasn't been, and Mike, the float pillow looks exactly like a mini toilet seat. Am I correct?
pretty close, yeah. A blue one at that. Like
There's a
little
hole and your head sets in it. I like that because it keeps your head supported, and really allows for me for an optimal experience to really have that weightless transcendence feeling, if that makes sense. So sorry to steal I wanted to give a little bit of a testimonial.
Yeah, a halo float pillow is what they call those guys. So but yeah, so there's multiple ways to float in the tank. Most people, it's if you use the pillow, you can generally get away with different arm positions, whether at your side, above your head. For the majority of folks, however, you can kind of get away with your arms above your head. That kind of lets your neck muscles fully relax as well, and then you can kind of just really kind of get into the session more or less. But yeah, so let's see, we're 2017, 2018, 2019, the center was just growing and growing and growing in Syracuse. And then 2020, COVID hit. We were able to actually adapt pretty well. Once we found out how COVID was spread, we pivoted accordingly. We added air purifiers throughout the facility. We doubled down on our cleaning procedures.
It sounds to me that you hit the hardest level of adversity a business owner could hit in 2020. Anybody, no matter if you've been running a business for 30 years, 50 years, 20 years, 2 months, 6 months, that's something that really put a challenge in front of you that would, I would think, get you prepared for something maybe you didn't even know was coming. Did you already know you were working towards the outcome of the acquisition of the center, or is that something that was after that?
So that was certainly after that. The founders approached me at the end of 2021 to let me know that they were looking to step away from the Syracuse location, and if I would like to purchase it. And I was, without a doubt, I said absolutely. So from the end of 2021 through basically all the way up to this year, October 2022, I was learning, crash coursing to how to basically acquire capital funding, working capital, get this purchase agreement underway with the attorneys, learning profit and loss reports, just how to really just the financial side of a float center, because I've basically been living, breathing it of the operational side. So now it's just really kind of taking note of all the the general items that we use on regular and just what the cost is for actually running this float center. So I was able to really kind of dial that in to pull the numbers of how we were doing in 2021, how we looked in 2019. 2020 was pretty much a wash, so I can't really depend on those numbers. During this whole time frame of trying to acquire the business, I would have loved to work through an SBA route, just to have basically the purchase price and my working capital all in one place. But since 2020 and 2021, we didn't have the strongest numbers. They said absolutely not. So I was like, okay, so now I basically had to work through a patchwork setup of different financial means to get where I needed to be and keep the doors open and keep the float center in Syracuse. So the flotation therapy is hopefully it's going to be my gift to Syracuse to just keep this place up and running, just to be able to provide this kind of service, because it's just such a broad range of benefits in a short amount of time, and everybody should try it. It's that powerful.
A lot of stress during the time of trying to figure out the P&Ls and the costs.
Yeah, I'd say the stress with trying to kind of sort all that out is probably just right up in line with the mental stress load of basic training, to be honest. You just kind of, oh man, it's because it's basically I had to come to the realization of like, hey, this might not happen. And I had to really kind of look at that aspect, and just really consider it. This is, and that's how flip of a coin it was.
It shows you the importance of having a strong team with you. So the right attorney that you can rely on and ask for that guidance, the right bank who's willing to underwrite and support your plan, to your insurance carrier, and then your accountant, and then your vendors, and understanding, you're ordering these materials and the frequency and the pricing, and they're going through the same headaches of COVID and their supply chains and their material costs. And so they're looking at pricing going, yeah, this is what it's been, but we don't know if this price will be going forward. So I'm sure it took a collective team and your wife.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your wife, and Worf listening to you at middle of the night when you had to like vent to the dog and have him wag his tail and give you his blessing.
Absolutely.
All that. But to Pete's point, you hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully we've all learned how to operate in the most challenging global economic crisis in 100 and some odd years. And so if you can get through that and come out on the other side, I feel like we can get through anything.
Absolutely. The best way I can kind of put it is just, I still have a soldier mentality, so I will just keep trekking on and just keep trying, until I hit a wall. And, I kept having to climb up, but I didn't see a wall yet, so I kept going. And eventually, I had to jump through a lot of hoops, but it made it happen, so.
Yeah. Well, we're happy that you did. This call really is an effort for you to tell your story, but also for us to create a conduit and awareness from the people that we interact with and people that are in our network. I think there's a benefit here that Syracuse and the surrounding areas and businesses, especially small little retreats where they can bring in their team and get them get their brains in a different slot than they were coming in, where they're coming out of there going, hey, I'm refreshed, I'm reset, and I'm ready to take on something in a different mindset. There's a huge advantage to this. So I think that's my on-air promise to you, is to try to figure out how to connect.
And I think on top of that, Pete, it's a great segue. One of the only other question I had for you, Glenn, is for those folks who have not done this before, describe the experience when they come in. Are they listening to music? What's the ambient lighting? Tell us about the experience if you were to explain it to the audience.
I like that.
Sure, absolutely. So generally, a guest will ring our doorbell, we'll buzz them in. They'll be greeted by a warm and friendly atmosphere, by warm staff, and then we'll walk them back to their room. It's guided, but it's also hands-off at the same time, because we very much value their own space. Depending on your post-float state, we just want to make sure, you're good to go. If you want to talk, we have an ear for you. But if you're a little withheld, we're going to try to notice that, just to make sure, out as you're kind of deep in thought, you might just kind of be able to go about your way, So we're trying to be helpfully reactive as possible, if that's a way to kind of consider it.
As a new person coming out, so I'd never been to anything like this before. I had no real understanding other than watching the video online and getting it. But when I was there, I felt like there was a good balance of educating you on what it was that you were doing, but also making you feel comfortable. The setting was relaxing, and it wasn't institutional, where you felt like you were being paraded to some chamber of death that you weren't really sure what was going to happen next. Well informed in terms of signage and understanding. There's an intercom in the room, so if you have any questions or concerns, you could push the button and someone's right there to help you out with that piece. And then, just on the other side of the float, like Glenn mentioned, just there seemed to be someone there that cared, and it wasn't somebody who doesn't do this or doesn't care about this. In this instance, it was Glenn. In my last experience, it was a young lady who was just super conscientious and wanted to know about my experience and wanted me to share about my experience. And for a guy coming out of it, experiencing something new and kind of amazing, you wanted to talk about it. I did, at least. I have a tendency to think out loud. I noticed. But so yeah, if that's a testimonial, Mike, or if that kind of gives you an idea of what it feels like for the person on their first time or second time, I'm that guy, and it was very comfortable.
So how many tanks are there at your facility?
So right now we have 4 tanks total. 3 would be the enclosed variety, whereas we do offer 1 open float pool. The open float pool is large enough to do a couples float, so 2 people can float at the same time with each other. And then the one thing to mention with the enclosed tanks is you are more than welcome to leave the lid open if you want. You can also just place a washcloth in between the lid if you want a little bit more passive airflow. But if you do like the humidity, then definitely keep it closed. But we definitely try to give you options just to make it as comfortable and accommodating as possible, with consideration of, you might be within a tank. And when you think tank, don't think of small enclosed space, because they're actually very spacious on the inside. These are, think more like a small camp tent. So they're, you're not, and you have control. Nothing locks. You're in your own private room. The shower's right in the room in front of the tank. We have soaps, conditioners. There's a vinegar rinse for those with hair to rinse the Epsom salt solution out of their hair. Lotions after. We really try to think of it all. So, a robe to let you exit the room to use the restroom if you have to use the bathroom mid-float. So
you call it a center, but I'm almost envisioning a spa.
Well, we do have one other service right now, and that is our salt room. The salt room is for respiratory health. The other term for it is halotherapy. But the idea with it is there's a machine that grinds up pharmaceutical grade table salt, dispenses it into the air, and breathing in the salty air and breathing out helps pull any moisture in your system so you can cough it out naturally. So if you have asthma, allergies, or some kind of respiratory related cold, it's going to really help kind of expedite getting that out of your system. We
have a personal sauna. It's like a chair and a canvas box, if you will, that goes around and your head's out if you want it to. And then I could almost envision, folks doing the float and then doing a sauna or vice versa at their house. But as you grow the business, maybe there needs to be a sauna room.
I do have the capacity, so as long as this next year ahead of me goes accordingly, I have the capacity to expand. There's a whole nother hallway of 4 unfinished rooms at the float center, and I'd love to add 2 additional open float pools, because that's kind of our bottleneck right now. It's a very popular tank. And then the unfinished rooms 3 and 4, I'd like to combine them to hopefully offer professional services, or maybe some other kind of service in general. But the template's there, that's for sure. And it just if willing, I'll kind of keep guiding it to fruition. That's for sure.
I like that you have a vision. That was actually a question I had for you. Is if you were gonna paint the picture of what it looks like in 36 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years, it sounds like you've already laid the groundwork for that in terms of what the infrastructure can hold. But in terms of like who's there, if you could paint a picture of what your clientele and what the environment and the feel there is, what do you think that is? I mean,
ideally, I'd love to get electricians in here, HVAC workers, nurses, doctors. I mean, anybody with either a physically or mentally demanding job. This is your reset to prevent burnout.
You had talked about potentially connecting with people like ClearPath. Is that still an initiative of yours?
Yeah, so ClearPath has linked me up with Syracuse PD right now, some first responders. I'm going to try to link up with their HR department and one of the guys to get them into the float tanks, and just hopefully they'll help give those guys a break, But past that, I've extended an invitation to any folks at ClearPath run into that are in very much need of, or if they're in crisis, basically. ClearPath will contact me and we'll get some floats in on the house just to kind of see if that's a good means of relief. And hopefully we can kind of expand from there.
I think as we go further and we learn more offline as well, maybe some of the locals, the union halls, like in terms of, if I'm just giving you ideas or thoughts of, maybe there's, some literature or some bandwidth there where you could connect with those type of organizations like Mike, where you're talking to, I think the HR teams of all the companies and industries you mentioned would be a good hit list for sending or showing them the content. I'd like to come in at some point, like I mentioned, and run a camera around to kind of show that environment. So as you're talking about it, it's not just words, there's actually a vision so people can see a picture of what that looks like. Maybe that'll help to get some of those HR teams paying attention, and something for them to distribute to as another tool in the belt, no pun intended.
Right.
We really appreciate you coming on and telling us about what you have going on. We think there's something here. I believe that there's an opportunity to tell other people in business about something that could help them and help their mental state, their mental health, and their business attributed to those behaviors. So it's been a pleasure getting to know you, getting to understand what you're doing, and we look forward to making some connections to get you more people to see what you're doing and how you do it. Mike, anything that you have, anything further on your end?
No, I think, this, what we call the spider webbing. So I know where Pete's brain was going about the union halls or the electricians, engineers. There's those, common connections that getting you introduced to some folks who might have access to people who would benefit from the physical demands of their job is great. So I know what I'm getting my wife for Christmas.
Now we got to get you in for a float too, so you can.
There you go. There you go. I'm glad you said it, because I was going to say it.
Oh, I don't have any physical or emotional pain, none.
But man, a reset is you haven't experienced a reset in your life until you've tried a float session. It's just that unique and profound. That's why, I mean, I'm here to provide it. So that's that. It's something to believe in, that's for sure.
We'll wear them down.
Really nice to meet you, Glenn.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, Mike.
Appreciate your time. You have a great day.
Thanks very much, Pete, for putting this together. I appreciate this opportunity, fellows, and I'll talk to you both soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye.